Hi, I'm Harper Thornhill, and I'm here again with Arik for another episode of Paid Companionship Industry Insights. And that name I always get tongue-tied over. So,
But
Arik, this week, choice has been in the news. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
yeah, so we actually got an article in Blick, so that's one of the largest newspapers in Switzerland, and so in the
Congratulations.
Sunday version in print and online. And
What's that the equivalent to in the UK? Just for me and my.
I don't know exactly, but maybe the Sun. So it's not it's so from a writing or audience perspective, it's not the most sophisticated. So I was a bit nervous when the article got written, but to be honest, like the article is very very well meant
Mm,
and well written as well. So there's obviously the headline, I would have preferred a different one, or in the proofreading there was a different one, but there's nothing in the article really that I couldn't stand behind, or that's just factually wrong, or
yeah.
describes something that we don't intend it to be.
It's
Um,
amazing how media just twist it just enough for you to go, oh, damn. And especially with the kind of like sex, 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 they always want to have that big word in there, don't they?
I mean, in
So,
the end of the day, an article where nobody clicks on,
yeah, it's pointless
and
for
just
everyone.
gets lost between other headlines doesn't
Yeah.
make sense either. So, but at least, I mean, the content they kept. So,
So, what was the reaction? Mostly positive,
yeah, I
negative?
mean, let's have a look. I mean, it really went live like 3 hours ago.
Oh, God.
So, we can actually let me share the screen. So this is the
That's the
article.
initial stages, isn't it? That first 3 or 4 hours where everyone's commenting and in the comment section.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, they talked a little bit, about we talked about the trend of scanning ID and how OnlyFans changed that,
Mm,
etc. So okay. So most recent comment from this person here. So I still prefer the sex boxes in Altstetten. So Altstetten is close to the city of Zurich, and um, the sex boxes are an initiative that the city
mm,
of Zurich came up with that was supposed to make street work safer,
yeah.
where instead of getting into someone's car, the car would turn up into something like a shed in a monitored location where there's security personnel as well. And then the service could be rendered in the car, and then the car, would leave again, as opposed to having to get in the car and then drive somewhere where you don't
Yeah.
have control.
I mean, you can still do that through choice, can't you?
Of
Like,
course, yeah, but it's also, I mean, that would be the location. You could select the
yeah.
location, right? But the on in the overall industry, these boxes are estimated to make up maybe 1%
Mm,
um in Switzerland. So, even like if you have an impact there, and I asked the city of Zurich, for example, what they do to make sure known violent clients are known among the provider community. And they
yeah.
said, well, and I have this in writing, they said they put flyers on the sex boxes.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if it makes up 1%, like what are you going to do? You're going to um, go like, oh, let me check the flyers first, and then memorize all the faces on the flyers, and then
Yeah.
go to your client and say, well, I think you may be one of the, like, I mean,
Also,
it's
a
just.
flyer is temporary, and bad players, bad actors in this industry are forever. Oh dear.
Yeah, then this person says, this reader says, um, well, first you have to verify with a government ID, a selfie, and consent from your wife,
Okay.
and then of course I'm sure he will be successful, as in ironically.
Yeah.
Um, then there's one person saying, they should have actually talked to providers, um, because this industry breaks women physically and mentally, and the article doesn't say anything about that. So I was meaning to, I replied. The moderator hasn't approved my comment yet, but
It's so frustrating seeing stuff like that because I mean, it breaks women. Yeah. Do you know what? So many industries are so bad, and yet, like, why is this one always getting the worst, the worst, the worst? It's so demoralizing knowing that I'm like loving this industry and like, all right, yeah, I'm not like a lot of people could see it as, oh, you're only kind of commercializing certain aspects of yourself, you're putting yourself down. But you know what? It works for me, it works for my family. And all of the people who are on the Choice website, it works for them. They have the autonomy to be able to choose. And you're actively stopping any possibility of somebody being coerced and tricked into doing sex work on the Choice platforms with all of the checks and things that you do. So
Yeah, and I mean that's really how we started planning the product as well. So I when I was conducting interviews with those approximately 700 sex workers,
700.
um,
Wow.
I asked, I always asked, and I mean it's a difficult question to ask for, to be asked by a stranger on the phone basically, but I asked like, so, and I asked what can go wrong, or what does typically go wrong when something goes wrong, because those are the cases that we want to,
Yeah.
you know, prevent or avoid or make sure they get reported.
How
um
often would those 700 people that you've interviewed who are sex workers, how often would they say that something went wrong?
Ever, like, I don't think anybody has ever said nothing has ever gone wrong. I think there was one occasion, I think one case where somebody really said, I've been lucky enough, nothing ever happened. But
Mm.
that person, not to be pessimistic here, but that person was also not in the industry for a very long time. So I, yeah, um,
It's
yeah,
it's
and
amazing that there are that many people who could just say, yeah, that's been an experience of mine. And yet, like, we just don't have the protections in place, despite it being and I'm not going to say an empowering job, because not all work has to be empowering, but despite it being suitable for lots of people, there's no protection in place. And you add regulation on top, and it doesn't help anyone. But adding
there's
safety methods like this,
there's also no consequences.
yeah.
Like, I mean, enforcing behavioral guidelines works a lot with also threatening with consequences, right? If there's no consequences, then bad actors, like, good actors will be good actors and they'll stay good actors, no, whether or not there's consequences, because they're not going to be targeted or by the consequences because they're good actors. But bad actors, if there's no consequences, you know, they'll just continue, or even be empowered to bad act, and try to potentially bad act even worse, because it has worked before. So they're trying to go one step further and then another step further. So that was just in an article that was published two days before that. Zurich is becoming like the sex hub of Europe, and clients are becoming more violent.
Wow.
And there's just nobody does anything. It's just being reported. So the media, it tells the story. It's
Mm.
getting worse. And then everybody looks the other way because, oh my God forbid I could be associated to this industry, you know?
Yeah. Because it's easier to go, oh, someone should do something about that problem that I'm actually not going to talk about, like political, like spokespeople. Like, even myself, I speak about sex work and I just think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I'm creating a target for myself, or having difficult conversations. Maybe I shouldn't. And I think, no, do you know what? You have to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the less stigma is around this as an industry. But people just avoid direct action within this space. And there's also so many opinions on what good work is, what work is, what sex work is, what is and isn't empowering. It's a minefield. There's thousands of opinions, more than that, probably.
Yeah, and then there was also constructive comments. Like, one said, for example, sex always works or always sells, gonna be a success for sure, but do you have to support it? And then he also said, he would have added a no coercion certificate, or like independent certificate,
All right.
like to ensure that no third party is involved.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
can you tell
it-
me and the people watching this, how do you assure that there are no third parties involved in someone's profile uploading? Because I saw in the news recently there was this AI video of Elon Musk, and it was just off one picture. This person had created a video where it was like live talking and doing all this. It's like watching me right now, and I am actually someone else. How do you like, how can you maintain safety in a world where this is possible?
so I think we have to be realistic. And so realistically, if somebody if somebody threatens your family and has your passport and tells you to do
Mm,
XYZ steps, and we all would do them, right? So if somebody would threaten my family and tell me to go open a bank account at a bank, I would do everything legitimately. It would be impossible for the bank to detect whether I'm actually opening this bank account out of my own will or not.
mm,
So I think we have to be conscious of that. Um, but I think we can make it as hard as possible. And right now, it's not hard at all. So what we're trying to do is just make it as hard as possible we can, with technology, so that it doesn't happen. Um, and it's all about the verification process, right? So our lowest level verification is an ID check and a selfie. And
so
the,
you are the
this
person you are. Like,
this doesn't say anything about self-determination, but what it does say is that that person is 18 years or older.
yeah.
So it does that. It takes away the risk of underaged um, coercion, or forced um, uh, yeah, human trafficking, basically. Um, and then determining self-determination. So that's what we're doing by being in touch with basically all the providers that we onboard, right? So
Mm,
either via chat or video call. In some cases, we also meet with them for an interview, and that's what we display on the verification levels.
mm,
If we don't get a feedback, and this happens, so far we had 500 provider registrations, 120 requested publication, and we approved about 90. So 75% of the requests, which mean, and most of the time when we would not approve someone, it would be because they just don't respond to additional questions we have
mm,
about the publication, which may or may not be because a third party is involved, but at least they're not
mm.
getting on our platform.
I mean, it's so easy to create an advert on, say, Viva Street with images you've taken from elsewhere, and you're putting, available tonight in this location and this phone number and that phone number. It could be anyone. Like it's impossible to find who has placed these adverts. And and yet they're still being put up and that people are still using them. It's amazing to me that the two ends of the safety spectrum, and people want to question like your platform and go, how can you possibly be like doing this? How can you get informed consent? And it's like, wow, we're just trying to make the world like a little bit safer. This is going to happen anyway. Let's just make it a little bit safer. But when it comes to consent, how can somebody give informed consent in a situation where there is that power balance? So, say I've turned up to the restaurant and the person who I've met is wonderful and charming, and then they encourage me to tap on the app and submit something that I don't want to submit. Like, how do you protect people in those instances? Can you?
I think that's a very good question. What we're trying to do, and what we looked at so when we built the product, or the initial version of it, is we looked a little bit about at the power dynamics between provider and customer, and we just looked at, okay, where are they unequal, and then try to come up with a feature or functionality that would even them out a little bit. So so one is the services list. So the aim is, and so the aim was and still is, to have an exhaustive list. So as many services as possible, so that providers can say exactly, what they want or are willing to provide, and clients know exactly what this person is willing to provide and what not in any case.
Okay.
So I don't know, there's on our platform 6 different kinds of oral sex or stimulation, for example, so that's just, I don't know, like it's hard to come up with that even, but it's important because it matters. It matters especially in an intimacy meeting. I think it also matters in companionship meetings. Like if somebody doesn't want to, I don't know, have outside visits or go on dinners because they just don't want to provide that kind of service, but they're fine with, I don't know, going to a party together, that's also fine, but it should be known. It shouldn't be something that the 2 parties have to find out chatting with each other,
Right.
and then one party starting to try to convince the other party. So that,
how should the concept of consent be navigated in situations where there might be alcohol involved? So I've gone for my dinner date, I've had a couple of drinks, they've had a couple of drinks. How, my decision making might be impaired. How does choice?
so I think the stance that we put us on is everything that's happening on our platform has to be 100% consensual, right? So what we do is we make sure that if a client asks you something, or we've heard multiple times that the situation is the client has paid and then says, well, I have paid and that's why you have to do this now, or if you don't do this, I want my money back, or things like that, which is this negotiation or boundary pushing that is going on. And so what we're adding there is no money exchange, right? So the money is exchanged through the platform and it's without discussion. It's like a referee almost. So what we do is we just check what was offered, and then the reports, and then what was communicated in the chat, and then we can release the funds to the provider, or issue a refund. Although a refund in a meeting is never possible to a client, because in our terms and conditions we clearly state, this is a best effort basis. There cannot be any guarantees for any outcome. We can't even guarantee the service catalog or the provided services, because consent can be withdrawn, with any client. So as a client, I mean, and that's okay, because why should the provider side carry all the risk, the safety risk, the risk of payment, the risk of no-shows, etc., and the client side has no risks? So the risk of the client side is that, well, if you don't behave normal, or you make the provider feel uncomfortable, they may not want to provide certain services to you, and that's okay.
So, are there any boundaries when it comes to the kind of desires or interests that have evolved over time? Is there anything in the makeup of choice where it says, I'm okay providing this service to that person, but this person, I'm only going to go on like companionship dates with that person or something? Is there can I make that choice between 2 individual clients?
And that's an interesting question. We thought about this, and that's on the roadmap, and it will be available once we establish client profiles, but that will be further down the road. So several clients have already asked us, hey, can I have a client profile where I can put my image and like write a bio text and potentially, say that my LinkedIn profile was verified, or my work email address.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Something like that. And at that point, like when the client reveals themselves and has a profile, it will be easier to also say as a provider, okay, this client will have access to all the services that I provide. And then this other client will only have access to a limited portion of my services. And that will in the end then motivate clients to, create more extensive profiles of themselves, because the benefit will be that they will have access to more services.
I love the notion of choice and the name as well. It's so clever. Obviously, it's just all about choice. You can freely and autonomously negotiate the terms and withdraw consent. Like you can maintain these relationships but not that kind of relationship. It's amazing. The possibilities of choice are amazing. So
I think
what
the
other comments did you get on the article? I'm
so
really
there
interested.
was one, I think one of the early ones was this is not moral. So, renting your body, shouldn't be done, etc. And society will break because of that. And then, but it's interesting then, other readers sort of already go against that comment and say, like if you're looking at it from that perspective, this has long passed,
Yeah.
um, uh,
Recognizing sex workers as legitimate workers just allows us to have the same rights and protections as everyone else. Like that's it. We're
yeah,
not
and
asking you to change your moral stance on sex outside marriage. Just give us the right to earn in a way that you also earn.
exactly. And that was my response. That was published as well. It's like, who, like we shouldn't, and we are not judging how anyone legally makes their money in any jurisdiction, but it should be safe and it should be consensual. And
Yeah.
that's what we're getting up in the morning for. All right.
So thank you so much today for going over those comments. It's been really interesting to talk about that. So it's a lot about consent from articles and AI to consent. So thank you so much. What are the future plans for Choice in the next few weeks?
So in the next few weeks, we're gonna sort of feature consolidate a little bit, keep the existing features, but just make sure they work smoother, iron out details, and also increase community engagement, both on the client and provider side.
Cool. I look forward to seeing it. Thank you
Thanks
very
a
much,
lot.
Arik. See you soon.
See ya. Bye-bye.